And welcome to episode 0 of the Aditt pod, going to be dubbed Let's Get At It, as we'll be having on a number of guests that are within our network, but also new friends that we'll make along the way. I'm your host and also a co-founder of Aditt, Drew Ruchim, and Aditt is not a podcasting company. Aditt is a two-sided marketplace on the internet and also on mobile apps that Alex Stern, my business partner and my best friend, who I will get into more as this podcast goes on and who you'll become very familiar with if you become a fan of this pod. The co-founder here, we built a mobile app that pays users to watch videos, and we get results for our advertisers because we incentivize these users to watch their ad, to answer questions, and to have a chance to convert. We have pretty much said and understood that the attention economy is broken and there needs to be a fix. And so incentivization is something that we believe will get users to actually do what these advertisers want, and then they'll be able to take that information and then get results, not just from Aditt, but also elsewhere. I'm not here to sell you on to Aditt. I am here to provide a platform, not just for myself, but for any other founder, entrepreneur, marketer, anybody that wants to share their story and share their message. This is episode 0. This is the introduction to Let's Get At It, as we'll be seeing episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4 coming up in the next couple of weeks, which will include Micah Blackburn, Smart Better AI, a kid who I went to school with at the University of Michigan, a Denver native, I believe. Nolan Weiss, also in the same boat of somebody who's my age, also went to the University of Michigan. He, not in the betting space, but is in the recovery space, as his company takes that name and cuts it in half as its Rico, as they sell a very luxury but also affordable Theragun compression leg sleeves and have a great brand that is really endorsing health. Excited to have those two guys on. That recording will be tomorrow. As I record this, it is 5:22 on January 7th. It is pitch black outside in Chicago, Illinois, as where I'm from. Here's the sign behind me. It says, "The world is yours." I don't know why you're able to read it better when my hand goes over it, but this is the first time I'm really using this podcast software. Alex Stern and I will be moving in with each other on February 1st in Brickell. We will be in a optimal environment for each other. We've yet to live with each other full time under our parental roofs since, I guess technically we went to San Francisco for a weekend, or at least a week, but it will be since our senior year of college, which was about a year and a half ago, as right now it's January 7th, and about May of 2024 was when that occurred. And so I'd like to provide this episode not as something where I'm going to be blabbering, but it's not going to be too dense. Plus, I'm not going to be doing this podcast for the views, for the attention, or for any vanity metrics. This is a entirely internal, conversing, discovery, brain growing podcast. I'm not sure. I think that it'll better my skills as a speaker, as a question asker, and also allow me to learn about people and what they've learned along the way. Well, I'm not the first person to be charting this podcast territory. I do have a microphone here that I don't know how the feedback's going to be just yet. And I have in my parents' extra room, and I have my Christmas gift right here that says, "The world is yours," which is alluding to the Scarface movie that my girlfriend and I both love very much. Shout out Julia. So, without further ado, I'm going to be prompting myself with some questions, and so you can get to know the podcast host, myself. But Alex Stern is also going to be joining us on a couple of podcasts whenever he'd like to jump in. Maybe he runs the show on a couple, but I'm going to get the ball rolling here for Let's Get At It. And so today, let's get at it with Drew Ruchim, myself, and I'm going to begin by asking, what do I do on the day-to-day that I think separates myself from the rest? Point being, what do I do that is a little bit different than the rest? And I think that's something that is vital, that I would push everybody to do, is to not touch their phone before bed and when they wake up. I'm not saying 2 hours before you go to bed and an hour and a half after you wake up. That is unrealistic, and I understand that. I like my phone a lot. But the last thing I do on my phone is send my girlfriend a beautiful goodnight message, and then I put it on the charger, I make sure my alarm is set, and I'm not touching it for the rest of the night. After that is when I can begin my nightly routine, which can be as simple as brushing my teeth, taking a shower, going to the bathroom, journaling, and then getting into bed. That is honestly just 10 to 15 minutes, probably 15 to 20 minutes, honestly, that I get to give to myself before bed without electronics. And now in the morning, it's a very similar thing where I like to get on a hot streak. As if I'm able to, before I start a game in basketball, go and hit it like 3 shots to say, all right, I've got some momentum here. So I'll get this hot streak going by getting up, maybe drinking some water, turning my fan off because I love it cold, and then understanding that maybe I can do some push-ups, maybe I'll make my bed, I'll get into a shower. Usually that shower is cold. And after that, I've already done 3 or 4 things that have allowed me to win the day thus far. And that's when I can allow myself to check my phone. But my phone is not parked near my bed. It would be parked, near that wall where it is not an arm's reach away. So I'm not saying that I do anything that is above and beyond. I don't run 5 miles to a marathon a day, nor do I do some extraneous workout. Sure, I keep my body in a very fit shape. I think that I eat on a regular, good, consistent basis. I drink an appropriate amount of caffeine. I hydrate myself right here. I get to my work when I need to, but in between those times where I am putting my phone away and I'm picking my phone back up, I truly do prioritize my sleep above all else. I think that you're going to work hard, you got to rest harder, and as much as I want to be in it and grind and get up at 6 and work until the break of dusk, and I don't know if that's even a word, but that's not the point. I don't think the point is to just get up and burn yourself out. I think it's the long game. I think it's longevity. And I think that it's the ability to sleep soundly, let the body recover, and let the brain recover. It's not just the body, it's the brain. So that is something that I'll be asking a lot of the people that I have on board, because I am genuinely curious. What do they do, and how have they built that habit up into where it now has become a bit of their identity? And I think that it's interesting to hear how these entrepreneurs and how these innovators go about their business, because everybody is different. And I don't think that there is a secret sauce, but I do think that there is a level of consistency, a level of humility, and a constant pursuit of growth that allow people to go about their days getting better each and every day, to where they don't reach December 31st and they say, man, what's my New Year's resolution this year? They just kind of continue on, and maybe they stay conscious over a couple of new things. And so the second question that I'll probably get into a little bit more, and I'm going to ask questions about their company, how they got there, why they're doing it, what their big goals are, and maybe their takes on the industries that maybe other people otherwise would disagree with. Something that is a little contentious but isn't overbearing. I'm going to ask them a question that might sound personal, but I think it's important. For some people, they might not have an answer to this. And other people, they might be able to talk for 2 podcast lengths on this. I think it is the pressing question, and it is, what drives you from a spiritual perspective? We have this internal voice in our head. We have this magnetic calling that our bodies naturally gravitate to. And I think that it's important to assess that from a personal level and strive towards it. Not just strive to perfect it, but strive to understand it, because I think it's a very dynamic and evolved thinking. And now spirituality can be a synonym, but it also can be a completely different word to religion in this sense. And I'm not here to preach gospel, but I am here to learn, because I do think that in a spiritual sense, we'll never know the answer. But if you do have the answer, I want to hear what you think it is. And so for me, my spiritual foundation is something of a monotheistic God, that I understand that the world was created out of love. And I believe, after holding my niece no longer than an hour and a half ago, who was born just yesterday at 2 p.m. on January 6th, shout out Lena Filler Ruchim, it's the fact that humans have the ability to do exactly what God had done with the universe, and that is to create with love. And when you hold a baby that is of your blood, this close to your face, literally, you start to think to yourself, I can't believe that you exist. I can't believe that you were created by my brother, who I know very well, and my sister-in-law, who I also know very well. They didn't try. They didn't craft her in any way. They just did what they knew what to do. I'm not going to go any further than that. And the baby just was able to be born and just cook. And I just thought that it was incredible. And so I I believe that there are things that come our way because we have emitted that energy. It's hard to sometimes articulate just because it is such an evolving thought process. But I'm not going to get too into the weeds of it. I think this is more for the others on this podcast to come in here and for me to ask questions. But also, I'm not just going to be some puppet that's just going to host a Q&A. I'm going to contest them a little bit. I would love to ask them some questions that maybe they have to try and fight and support their answer, or maybe we agree upon it. I'm not sure where this is going to go. That's the beauty of an organic conversation. And I would say that I am constantly in the pursuit of learning more. How you personify this God, whether that be universe, God, Christianity calls it Jesus, Judaism can call it Hashem, however you want to look at it. There is a constant belief that there is something that created what we are here for. And if something created it, then that means that we are cut from it, or cut from that same cloth in that sense. And so if we are of that same fabric, then that means that we have pieces of ourselves that can emulate and can relate to, can connect with this infinite creator. And I find that fascinating. Now, do I stay conscious of this 24/7? I would say I try to, but absolutely not. Of course, I get into the habits of, playing a video game on my phone, or watching a YouTube video, or getting lost and playing golf. Something that I am able to enter my mortal body and be able to do. However, I think it's fascinating the fact that the universe can be a mirror in the way that we see things internally and how it happens to us from an external standpoint. I heard a quote that was saying, we don't experience reality, we experience our nervous system. And that made me think, considering that I have a now niece that's no more than 2 days old. She does not know what reality is, but she's experiencing her nervous system. That's why she's crying, or she's whining, or she's content, because that's just what she's experiencing. She's experiencing whatever her nervous system is telling her to feel. And when we get older, especially in this generation with this abundance of information, and I think it's okay to understand and take a step back and realize I don't know what's necessarily happening to me or what's happening around me. And that's why it's so important to understand what's going on inside. And that segues me into my next point. What got me down this path? Why am I on January 7th, 2026, having the ability to start a podcast for a company that I've been working for, not for, but created with Alex Stern pretty much 2 years ago? And the answer to that is we were on a similar track, a similar foundation, where we were able to pretty much be our best selves because we looked internal. We were students at the University of Michigan. We weren't reinventing the wheel here by any means, but we were interested on what is the mind versus the brain, because it's synonymous when you're younger. Oh, my mind and my brain, it's up here. And then I read in a book, okay, well, what happens if you stub your toe? Where did your mind go? Is it still in your head? Or is it on your toe that just got stubbed? Made me think for a second. And that pursuit of understanding the mind and realizing that you can condition your mind to respond to things and to say things internally that allow you to be different on an external standpoint made me really understand that what I think is what I become. Because I never liked taking cold showers, nor did I like running. I never liked to do a plank for more than 20 seconds, and now I'll do it for 4 to 5 minutes. That's not because of anything else than understanding that my mind can get there. And I don't say this saying I have the answers, but I'm just saying that these are some observations that I had before I started even pursuing an entrepreneurial path. And that's why I can sit here January 7th and say I am in a constant pursuit of figuring this out. People that come on here, because as much as I want to blabber into this microphone, I'm literally staring at myself with this, this is the decoration, the sole decoration that I have in my podcast studio that is no different than the studio/workplace that I work at on the daily regarding Aditt. I mean, I have a deck of cards here for, maybe playing solitaire, but let this be a platform for anyone else that wants to come on here to share their story, to sit in the room with me, this online room, and just to converse, to get it out there. Because if it has 0 views, then there's no harm done. And if there's 100 views or 100,000, there's still no harm done. But the beauty of this comes in the real-time conversation. And I think that's fascinating because we're able to sit here and do things in a day and age where 20 years ago, a podcast was nothing. People would laugh at the fact that you listen to other people talk. But people like to listen to other people talk sometimes. I think it's a great activity to do when you're in the car or you're in a workout, maybe even on the plane. It's soothing. It's different. It can be believed that it'll help build a brand, a personal brand that you guys will be able to truly understand who I am. Because a mere 30 to 60 second video that I post on TikTok just to try and grab your attention in a very, very competitive, attentive space as TikTok is, that's not exactly who I am, nor who Alex Stern is. But this is who I am. Far closer to it, at least. My goal down the line is to be able to get a camera crew to follow Alex Stern and I as we play golf against each other. I'm going to begin to wrap up this podcast and pretty much just say thank you for listening, because if you're listening to this, you did not need to do this. This is episode 0. This is the introduction to Let's Get At It with Drew Ruchim. And I'm extremely grateful that you're able to be here, because if you're listening to this, that means that you are believing in whatever is going to come after this. Because, of course, I have a lot of goals. I set high standards. I'm shooting for the moon, because if I miss, I guess I will be amongst the stars. But the purpose is not to just have the fame and, I guess, financial freedom, but the purpose is to provide value, which is why we've built Aditt, which is why I am creating this podcast through Aditt's name, and which is why I'm going to press record and submit so you guys can listen to this. So thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for the future. And if you're here in a year or 10 years, or you're here tomorrow, I'm Drew Ruchim, and I'm signing off. Peace.